My wife has a stack of recipes she has collected that were handed down from her late mother. They are mostly handwritten on paper and on index cards. They are bound by a rubber band and kept in a drawer. I thought that a handcrafted recipe box would be a great gift for her this Christmas. All the wood you will need for this project is 3 feet of 1x6. So I grabbed a piece of mahogany for this project. You can use any piece you have lying around. I started by measuring the size of the stack of recipes to decide on the size of my box. Yours might be bigger or smaller. I say this in all my videos. That's the beauty of custom built. They are tailored to the content. My stack of recipes is 6 inches wide, so I have decided to make my box 7.5 inches wide. This will give the contents some play and allow for me to adjust in case of mistakes. If you're a subscriber, you know that is likely to happen. So take your measurement and make your first mark at 7.5 inches. Then, using a speed square, extend your mark and let's get cutting. Like in all my videos, cut your first piece and then use it as a guide to cut the rest. You will need 3 pieces cut here to complete this project. Everyone likes my tips and tricks, so to avoid doing public math and still being able to get the best centered cut from your bandsaw, check this one out. Take a pair of calipers and measure the exact width of your wood. So I came up with 19 millimeters. I simply divide that number by 2 and end up with 9.5. So move your calipers to 9.5 or as close as you can get to that number and use that to set the fence on your bandsaw. Double check that your fence is square or don't make your cut. I have a video to show you how to do this. After all looks good, use a feather board on the lower portion and hold the top secure to the fence and cut your 3 pieces. They should all end up perfectly in halves. Real quickly, I look at all my pieces and search for the prettiest grains and colors to choose which ones I want on the top and on the front of my box. These will be most visible. Move the piece you chose for the top aside. Take the piece you chose for the front and another one and lay them in front of you. We will now make our rabbits. Take the other 2 pieces and stack them together, now allowing one to go flush with the bench top and the other to stay on the front piece. Make your mark. Just a reminder that these marks go on the 7.5 inch widths, not the short 6. You can make multiple passes, but if you have dado blades, stack them to get the exact width of your piece. Use the piece as a guide. Set your blade height to half the width of your piece and align your fence according to the mark you made earlier. Take your time and make your cuts. It will be much easier to sand pieces now before we join them together. So start with 100, sand all surfaces, then use 220 and finish with 320. We will touch up again, but attempting to sand inside the box after it is put together will prove to be difficult. Okay, now I get to throw in my catchphrase. I make this up as I go along. So, while holding all the pieces together, I did not like the square look of this box, so I've decided to take the sides and shorten them down to 5.5 inches. This will keep the box from looking like a big, perfect square, and more like a rectangle. To keep your pieces identical, stack them and clamp them together. Then, cut your mark. We can now start to put our box together. Taking one of your rabbited pieces and one of your shorter 5.5 inch pieces, place some glue in your rabbet and then join them together. Remember, when working with wood glue, the more pressure you apply, the tighter the bond. So don't hold back on squeezing the pieces together with some extra clamps. If you have enough clamps, you can join the other 2 sides of the box together as well. Place some glue in the rabbet, place them together, and then squeeze tightly. This next step is overkill, but I did not want you to be surprised when you saw this piece and said, "Hey, where did that letter come from?" I took the bottom piece and I routed the letter R in it. Yeah, this could stand for recipes, or maybe just my last name initial. With the 2 corners now dry, we can join them together to complete all 4 sides. Same as before, place some wood glue in the rabbet and then clamp them together. Apply your clamps loosely and evenly. Then go back and give them one more squeeze to make sure they're all the same tightness. After you allow ample time to dry, you can remove your clamps and prepare to attach the bottom. So I made this decision on the fly. I decided that I did not want to see any kind of grain change when looking at the sides of the box. So I thought, why not just have the bottom of the box inset and just glue it into place? So hopefully I can pull this off. So I took my 4 sides and laid it on top of the base. I moved it around a bit to make sure the letter on the bottom was centered. Then I just took a mechanical pencil and traced around the inside of the 4 sides. It was at this point I did not like the height of the box. I thought it looked a bit obscure in ratio to how high it was, so I decided to cut it down in size before I attached the bottom. Not too much, but just enough to make me happy. So I decided to just take an inch off to see how that looked. Like I said, I make this up as I go along. So while at the table saw, I noticed that my 1-inch mark was in the center of the box. So that is why I set the tape measure from the blade. I simply moved the fence until the box extended 1 inch beyond the blade exactly, and I used the tape measure to mark that. I just ran all 4 sides of the box across the table saw, and bang, the box is now 1 inch shorter. If you want to make yours a little less, feel free to take off as much as you want. So now that I was pleased with the height of the box, I went back to cut the base of the box. When you cut your lines, make sure that you leave the lines. Cut right up to each line, but once complete, you should still be able to see a fraction of the pencil line, all the way around the box. If you see too much pencil, then you have not taken enough off. If you've cut all the pencil line away, you might come up short. Before we put the bottom in place, we will stain it. I used dark mahogany here. Just the top of the piece. Don't waste time on the underside or any of the sides for that matter. We will be gluing them to other sides and we want that still to be a good bond. Take some wood glue and put a thin line all the way around the perimeter of the piece. Then smooth it down with your finger. This should already be a tight fit, so you don't need too much because it will just get pushed out while trying to set the piece in place and make a mess. Once you have it aligned, just tap it into place. Then wipe up any excess glue that has pushed out on the inside of the box and make sure it's clean again. Now we can attach our lid. Make sure you are looking at the pretty grain that you chose in the first steps of this video. Don't put it upside down and say, hey, what happened to that pretty grain I chose? So using the same steps, place a bead of glue all the way around the perimeter of the box. Smooth it out thinly with your finger. And if you wipe it, wipe outward towards the outside of the perimeter. You do not want to have so much glue that a drip or bead appears on the inside of the box and be noticeable when you open it. Once in place, clamp down and allow to dry. This is coming along nicely, and yes, it's optional, but you can put your wife's name on the top piece, and I hope your box does not say Christy too, or I might get a little suspicious. So, after you allow ample time to dry, you can come back and remove your clamps. If you're watching this video and think to yourself, John screwed up again, and forgot to make a lid that opens, well, this time I didn't screw up. I did this on purpose, and you will see how that works out later. This next step is to get rid of all the sharp corners and round and smooth the appearance of the box. So I take a round over bit and place it on the router table. Now you can do this with a freehand router, but just make sure you clamp the box down firmly before you begin. Going back to 320 grit sandpaper, make your final touch-ups before you stain. Hit all the corners and the edges where the router bit left a less than smooth surface. Now we are going to stain the outside of the box. Again, I am going to use the same color stain on the outside as I did on the inside bottom piece. If you have any letters etched into the box, make sure you get enough stain on the inside of those letters and let it sit a bit longer before wiping off. Okay, we need to really let that dry before we continue on. So I'm going to place this in front of a heater because it's cold outside until I am sure it is good and dry. While that is drying, we can set up and cut the lid. Take your bandsaw miter gauge and set it to a 6-degree angle. This might not sound like a lot, but I think it should do the trick. After your miter gauge is set to 6 degrees, take a scrap piece of wood that you are not afraid to make a cut into and lay it down and clamp it tightly to your miter gauge. Now place your box on the bandsaw. Double check that the top of the box is to your left and the bottom to your right. Now, starting from the center of the box, slide your box about 1/2 of an inch to the right. This will put you about 1.5 inches from the edge. Now that it is in position, securely clamp the box onto your scrap piece of wood that is tethered to your miter gauge. Take your time, and now you can cut your lid free. Take some 500 to 800 grit sandpaper and lightly sand down any splinters that have occurred from cutting. Do not sand any outside edges. You want to keep those sharp to give the illusion of a seamless box. So sand flat on the top of your cut and on the inside to keep any splinters from hitting someone's hands. Wipe out any leftover material from cutting or sanding with a wet paper towel. Once you're sure it looks good, we can begin the final stain. Now, using the same color stain, I'm going to stain the inside of the box. We are almost done. Next, place the lid back on top of the bottom and align in place. Then, with some spray lacquer, give the box its first coat. Come back in about an hour and apply the second coat. Do not spray the bottom or the inside of the box. After the box has good and dried, we can finish it up by placing the hinges on the box. First, take off the lid and set it aside. Remember, we want to give the illusion of a seamless box. Start with the bottom of the box and flip it upside down. Then, bending the hinges into place, place them flat on your workbench and slide them up to the box. Eyeballing this, I place the first hinge about 1 inch away from the edge. Take a Sharpie and make a mark into each hinge hole. Then repeat this to the other side. Once you have all 4 holes, you can put a small pilot hole on the back of each black dot, just enough to give your screws something to bite into. They do not have to be deep, and certainly be careful not to drill all the way through your box. Now put your hinges in their place and set a screw into each one of the holes. Do not tighten all the way down yet. Once all the screws are in place, set the box back down and with the hinges back flush to the bench top, then screw them in tightly. Finish by flipping your box back upright and placing your lid onto the box. Take your time aligning your box. Use a flat surface, then clamp the lid securely into place. Using the same steps, drill pilot holes to allow your screws to grab into the wood, and then with the clamps and the lid snugly in place, screw your hinges on tight. And that's it. This box is ready for showtime. A great personal handmade gift that any cook in your family would love. So what do you think? Would love to hear your comments below. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button.